Hey, good afternoon, friends. Welcome to The Altar with me, your host, Colby Martin. Ooh, dropping the middle names today. Dropping the middle names. What's your middle name? If you're watching and you want to share your middle name with me, I'm always fascinated about, I like to try and guess people's middle names. I get one right out of about every 37 attempts, which I think is a pretty good ratio. Hey, on The Altar today, we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk a little bit about my questioning of my own sense of fraudulency. Is that a word? Fraudulency? Anyway, some things I've been thinking about and I wanted to share with the yous. Then I got a new segment called In Case You Missed It. A couple things to throw your way and, in case you missed it. And then a little sneak peek about what we got going on next week, as well as later on tonight at the Kate and Colby Show. Anyway, you're here. You did it. We're here. I can't wait to spend the next 47 to 58 minutes together. We'll see how long the show lasts. It lasts as long as you want, really. If you keep hanging out and talking and asking questions and interacting, I'll hang out until it hits 60 minutes, and then I usually leave. But anyway, I'm really glad you're here. We're going to get started. Welcome to The Altar. All right. So if you haven't been here before, this is a weekly live show called The Altar. And the goal of my show, or maybe the point or the purpose of the name or why I do this, is because I think that some beliefs need to be sacrificed for the sake of well-being. And so the name The Altar, that's altar with an E, is another word for change, another word for shift, another word for transform. And as a former evangelical, I identify now as a hashtag post-evangelical, I have come to see that there are many beliefs and ideas, specifically within the religious world, but that leaks over into other aspects of life too. There are some beliefs that hold us back from flourishing, that hold us back from wholeness, that hold us back from well-being. And so part of my life's work is to investigate and to explore ideas, religious ideas, specifically ideas that have emerged or come out of the Christian tradition, which is my known tradition, although sometimes I might verge into other lanes of religious exploration because I find it fascinating and interesting. And Christianity doesn't have the market on bad ideas, by the way. For so long, many of us believed that Christianity had the market on the truth. And then we might have come to see that that is a belief that needs to be sacrificed. So we lay that belief down. We're like, actually, truth is truth. It's not bound by any one tradition or religion. But then sometimes I think we also can get so intent on critiquing our own tradition, which is appropriate in many ways, that we also forget that other religions also have really bad ideas too. So we as Christians do not have the monopoly on truth, nor do we have the monopoly on bad ideas. So anyway, so I do this show. And in many ways, it's in its infancy. This is only the 49th episode. I've been doing this for about a year, because there's 52 weeks in a year, last I checked. And maybe I took a week or so off. But yeah, I started this pretty much a year ago. And in fact, next week is going to be my 50th episode. And I've got a special guest all lined up that I'm excited to tell you about here in a little bit. But in many ways, this show is still in its infancy. I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning and enjoying this live stream format, figuring out what does it mean to sort of put on this space, to hold this sort of virtual space for you to, if you have room in your schedule or your life or interest to come and hang out with me live. Is that something that people enjoy? Is that something people find value and worth? And I know that there are many of you that do, and I've heard from you, and I see you every week, and it's such a freaking encouragement to me to know that, hey, if I'm going to go live Wednesdays at 2, I know I've at least got Mercy and Susan and Shane and Phil and the other Phil and a whole bunch of others of you that make a point to come hang out with me. And it means a lot. It really does. I really appreciate it. And Odette, actually, I looked down and I see Odette's here, and Odette's telling, I asked earlier what your middle name was, and Odette says, my middle name is Natalia. I use both names 50-50, but I think that Natalia and Odette are two different humans in the same body. Odette's the professional, and Natalia's the YOLO. Please don't judge me. No judgment, Odette. I actually love that. I love that. Thanks for sharing. So anyway, so I do this show. And it's in its infancy, and I've been trying to develop and think through different ways to utilize this platform. One of the things that I do regularly is I share my weekly perspective shift article. So I'll do that here in a minute. Talk a bit about this idea of wondering if I'm a fraud or not. And then I've been thinking of other segment ideas, other things to do and ways to sort of communicate with you and share information that I think might be useful or helpful or beneficial. I developed these things called altar calls, which is, again, altar with an E, altar call, where I invite you to maybe reconsider something, to be open to the possibility that some ideas, as I say, are worth sacrificing for the sake of well-being. Last week I did a segment that I'll do regularly. I'll bring it back, called Reasons for Hope, or Reasons to Hope. Reasons to Hope or Reason? I don't remember what it was. What was it? We've got that little bumper right here. Reasons for Hope. That's right. And that, my thinking there is, man, we're bombarded with bad news often. So, but there's like also a lot of really good things going on in the world. And so anyway, so I'll share that segment from time to time. Today I've got a new segment I'm going to try out called In Case You Missed It. So we'll get to that here in a minute. But before we go any further, I thought I would do what I call a viewer sound off, which really is just an easy layup question. Well, sometimes I guess I tried to make it a more layup question today because look, not all of us are ready to just jump in and process and fill the comment section with the depths of our soul, unless you're an Enneagram type 4. So for the rest of us, we might just enjoy a real simple question like this. Just let me know. In the last week, what's the best meal that you've had? See how easy it is? See how easy this is? In the last week, what's the best meal that you've had? Let me know in the comment section, and I'd love to hear what you've been eating and enjoying. And look, maybe it was a rough eating week. It was just like mostly grilled cheese and cereal, but on Friday night, you threw a little bit of bacon in that grilled cheese, and that was the best you had. Or maybe you had a chance to go out safely and enjoy a restaurant, and you had some fine Italian, or you got to sit at a Mexican restaurant and get all the chips and salsa that you could gorge yourself on, and you had the chicken Diablo burrito, whatever it is. What's been the best meal you've had in the past week? I'm gonna go see if anybody else shared their middle names. Shane says it starts with a J, but I'm not interested in sharing it beyond that at this time. Totally fine, Shane Jane. I'm assuming that's what it is. Shane Jane. I'm just kidding. Susan, your middle name is Lethel? Lethel? I don't know that I've ever seen those combinations of letters. I've seen the A and the E switched. Lethal. My middle name is Lethal. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, it's not your middle name, but that'd be pretty cool. Mercy is Anne with no E. It's very important there. Very important. James says, Seamus is an old nickname. My real middle name is George. James George, Seamus Rock. Mine's Brenneman. Good old family name. All right, what's some of the best food you've had in the last week? Cajun seafood boil. Mercy, that sounds delightful. Was that like a big group party, or was it just sort of a private little feast that you had for yourself? That sounds really good. Gustavo. Hey, Gustavo. Good to have you here. Gustavo says, I'm starting to become addicted to this every week. Hey, you and me both, brother. That's my middle name. Well, I'm Mexican, so it works different. But I think my middle name would be the one I actually go by, Gus. Gustavo. I love that. Thanks for sharing. Gus. Brooke says, hi, Brooke. Glad to have you here. My best meal has been spag bowl. I'm going to assume that's a short for spaghetti bowl. Love that. Shane Jane, just Shane Deal says macaroni and cheese based on my grandmother's recipe. It was good. So you made your own mac and cheese? That's awesome. Oh, Susan, you had pizza brought over for your first movie night in years. What is your pizza of choice, Susan? And is it a kind that not many people like? Like, I happen to really like Hawaiian pizza. I'd say it's one of my top 3 favorite pizzas. But I find that's a kind of a polarizing choice. People either love Hawaiian or they hate it. I like Hawaiian with jalapeno too. Thank you. Although I like almost anything with jalapeno. Karen, mermaids and cowboys on Sunday, which is better than mermaids and cowboys on Wednesday. I'm glad you're getting to eat a lot of mermaids and cowboys though. Chicken parm, I guess, Benai said. Like, I don't know. Way to not think too hard about it. Just be like, probably chicken parm, I'm going to say. That's awesome. Oh, and a roast dinner. All right, so Brooke had spag bowl and a roast dinner. Brooke, you've been eating well. Love it. Fried potatoes and scrambled eggs, James. That's my kind of food. I love that. All right, Susan, you like most pizza except no sardines. Fair enough. All right. See, look how simple this was. We got to talk about food for a few minutes, and we did it. And we practiced interacting with one another. I'm proud of us. Good job. Well done. All right. If you see the description, I don't know how easy it is, depending on what device you're watching, how easy it is to see the description. But in the description of the episode for today, I linked to this book from, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Is it La Rochefoucauld? La Rochefoucauld? François de la Rochefoucauld. I do not know. But anyway, so François was here's the back of the book says, after abandoning politics when he was about 40, François de la Rochefoucauld, 1613 to 1680, began to write down his maxims, which were first published in book form in 1665. Poetic, ironic, and frequently humorous, his wise observations can also be blunt and brutally candid. So a friend of mine named Michael, thank you, Michael, sent this to me a while back, and it's just a book full of little one-line maxims. And every once in a while I'll pick it up and I'll read a couple. I'm like, I like that. So here's a couple. I got to figure out how to say his name right, so this goes a little easier. But La Rochefoucauld maxims. Here's one for you. Number 197. We flatter ourselves that we quit our vices. In reality, our vices quit us. Agree or disagree? Here's one. Number 201. Failings known to us alone are easily forgotten. That's a good one for all you Enneagram 3s and 1s out there who get all wrapped around the axle with failure. Failings known to us alone are easily forgotten. You just shake it off, move on. How about number 345. Here's a maxim. Violent hatred puts us beneath those whom we hate. Agree or disagree? Violent hatred puts us beneath those whom we hate. This reminds me of really how this whole live show started for me a year ago. I was writing a series on my Perspective Shift newsletter about hatred. I was rereading Howard Thurman's book, Jesus and the Disinherited, and he has a whole chapter on hate, and it just captivated me. And so I wrote about hate for I think 8 weeks. I don't remember how long it was. But then I started doing this live show to just read those articles on hate. And I remember being just entirely convinced that Howard Thurman's perspective on hatred was correct, in that hatred is lethal. Like, it is a lethal toxin that if we allow it to take root in us, will just bring about death. So anyway, that maxim, violent hatred puts us beneath those whom we hate. I think that holds some water. All right, one more. See if I can just randomly pick one more here. Yeah, this one's pretty standard. Number 371. We all criticize in others what others criticize in us. And that goes back to that whole concept of projection, and what we tend to judge and call out in others many times is the thing inside of us that either people have attacked us for, criticized us for, or that we desperately hope they don't. Like, I hope nobody sees that this is a thing that I do and struggle with, and part of how I manifest my insecurity around that is I'm going to project it onto other people. All right. So anyway, if you're interested, nice little thing is like $6 on Amazon. I dropped the link in the description below, but it's a fun one to kind of just pick up periodically and be like, hey, here's a guy who was thinking about some things 400 years ago. And many of the wisdoms, I think, are timeless. Yeah, Jazz, I love that. Or as they say in recovery, if you spot it, you got it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. Oh, James loves Hawaiian pizza, which is great, but then I lost him at jalapenos. That's fine. That's fine. I lose a lot of people at jalapenos. Almost most of the time, it's more spice, the better for me. And James says, I try not to hate people. There are, however, a lot of toxic people that I try to avoid. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Boundaries are good. Boundaries are good. So choosing to not hate does not therefore mean that we're just like, well, I guess I have to like everybody. Nope, don't have to like everybody. All right. So that is, those are some maxims from, again, don't know the pronunciation. If anybody knows how to pronounce that and can clearly state so in the comment section, I'd appreciate it. All right, let's go to this little segment that I'm calling In Case You Missed It. Okay. You must be blinded by the lights. You must be blinded by the light. Like that little hook that I put in there. I'm like, what goes with in case you missed it? You must be blinded by the light. Maybe that's why you missed it, because you're blinded by the light. But maybe in case you missed it, this week, did you know that on Netflix, the current king of content creation, the KCC, a new documentary called Pray Away just dropped. What was it? Yesterday, Tuesday. Pray Away. I haven't seen it yet, but we actually, a few weeks ago, if you were around, we had Julie Rogers on the show during my Pride Month conversations. And Julie Rogers has a history with Exodus International, when Exodus International is this organization that used to be the largest organization of its kind, focused on this idea that people can pray the gay away, that they can essentially, through the right combination of therapy and prayers and just trying really hard, they can stop being gay. And a number of years ago, the curtain was pulled back on that whole concept, both like from the research perspective we've known for a long time, like, no, you can't just change your orientation like that. It doesn't work that way. And then some of the top leaders of Exodus were finally of the opinion of, okay, this doesn't work. We recant this. So Julie Rogers was part of that organization for a while, and was one of the individuals who herself was of the opinion for a while that maybe that stuff worked. And so she's like, I know that I'm gay, but I'm going to choose to sort of live in this sort of celibate lifestyle. And then she had this, change of heart and mind, and realized that is not healthy. It's not good. So anyway, so this documentary, which I haven't seen yet, supposedly is a phenomenal documentary, which I completely predict it will be, that really gets at the heart of a lot of this. And so I'm excited to watch it. I think it's something that if you yourself identify as queer, I would say watch it with care and tenderness. Maybe make sure that you just have my wife and I call them chasers. Make sure you have a chaser afterwards, like a comedy, like all lined up to watch to kind of cleanse the palate a little bit, because I imagine it's heavy, and maybe you just skip it altogether. But I think it's an important work because even though Exodus shut down, there have been other organizations that have sprung up in its place. Because there is still this false belief, speaking of the altar, sacrificing bad beliefs for the sake of well-being. There is this bad belief that not only that it is a disorder or somehow a fallen state to identify or to be lesbian or gay, but then there's even worse beliefs that can somehow be changed in a person. So that needs to stop. And so we need documentaries like this to reach more and more people with this pulling back of the curtain. That these are garbage organizations doing garbage work that is 100% doing more harm than good. I won't say 100%. Why won't I say 100%? Because, look, I'm not going to close the door entirely on the individual for whom they in their own spirit and conviction are of the opinion that for them to be in a same-sex relationship is not what God wants for them. Now, I could argue with them, and I could insist otherwise, and I could present, examples A, B, C through Z of how that's not necessarily the case. And I could, as you know, I can look at the Bible verses and explain to them why the Bible does not say what they think it says. But if it's in their heart and in their conviction that, for them to be in a same-sex relationship would be a violation of their conscience, then, as Paul says in Romans 14, for them it would be wrong. Like, to do a thing when your conscience tells you is wrong, to do that thing is wrong. So sometimes I think about that, and I think about individuals who go through these sort of faux therapy processes. And is it possible that every once in a while there's an individual who, as a result of these organizations, is living a kind of life that might be considered, on the whole, quote unquote, better than before? Maybe. Now, don't mishear me. I'm not at all saying that justifies the existence of these organizations. Like I said, they're garbage. I'm just trying to walk back a little bit when I said 100%, because really nothing in life is 100%. Nothing in life is that way. And so I'm trying to hold space for the individual that has maybe found a quality of life within a path of celibacy, or a path of, I don't know, something like that. And they have found a type of flourishing within that. Now, you and I might think to ourselves, and might hope, and might, if we were to have a conversation with that person, be like, it could actually maybe even be even better than this. Like, there's actually, you could level up. You could be in a relationship with someone that you love, and that could add a whole nother dimension. Anyway, getting a little off script here. I think the larger thing is, in case you missed it, a new documentary dropped this week. And I think that we should watch it. I think we should crank the algorithm up on Netflix, get it to the top of the charts so that it's recommended more, so that more and more people are aware of this, and that less and less organizations that perpetuate these harmful teachings will find foothold in any sort of place in our culture. Okay? All right. All right. We did it. Good job, everybody. That's in case you missed it. Michael, oh, what? That's not That's a fun scene. I guess I just went to this scene. I'll do a quick plug for my UnClobber online courses. Did you know that 2 months ago I launched UnClobber online courses? To learn more, visit unclobber.com. And that's the end of that segment. Sorry about that. That was a weird old scene. Michael Middleton. Guys, remember earlier when I said this, my friend Michael sent me this book? He's now on the broadcast. His ears must have been on fuego. And he is coming in to say it is La Rochefoucauld. La Rochefoucauld. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Okay, listen to this. JT Combs over on Facebook said, we used to go to the gay bar after Pray the Gay Away meetings. That's pretty, I want to say that's awesome. I don't know if that's the spirit in which you meant it. I can imagine for you, there might have been a weird shame spiral in that part of your life. So that part probably sucked, but maybe looking back on it now, it can be like, that's ironic and fun. Yeah, Shane, same here. Lots of people recommending it. And then also, just individuals that should take care for themselves. Yeah. Such as that, Susan. Yeah. Not in the emotional space right now. Do it later. 100%. 100%. All right. I send out a weekly newsletter. Did you know? Called Perspective Shift. You can go to colbymartin.substack.com. And I send out these weekly newsletters on Wednesday mornings. And then I like to hop on here on the altar and I like to share it with you. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to switch to this scene here with my nice little iMacintosh and figure out what happened to my Safari there. Why aren't you showing? Where'd you go? 1 second. I got to figure out why it's not showing camera. No. Where'd it go? Hold on just 1 second, friends. I was working earlier. Let me quit that and reload it. NDI scan converter. Capture Safari. There it is. Whoever knows why things work 1 second and not the other. All right, so this morning's article, thanks for hanging out with me there. This morning's article is called I Don't Mean to Be a Fraud, ... I think. I don't mean to be a fraud, y'all. I think I don't mean to be a fraud. So let me just share a bit of these thoughts with you. And again, you can go to this URL right here to read this or to get more articles like it or to subscribe. And then I love it when you interact with and comment and ask questions or whatever as we go through these. Makes me feel a bit more like we're doing this thing together, and it's not just a one-way street. But let me share with you what was coming up for this week a little bit after I take a drink. Stay hydrated. It's warm here in the San Diegos today. Mercy, I hope it's a little less intense in Minneapolis. I hope you've cooled off a bit. But yeah, it's hot here. It starts like this. Several years ago, I preached a message at my church. True story. Stood up in front of everybody. And I was brutally honest about how I have a kind of a complicated relationship with the truth. That was a fun moment. We were talking about love, and we were going through Bell Hook's book, highly recommend, called All About Love. And one of the components of love is honesty. As I just took that opportunity to be like, hey, everyone, I'm an Enneagram type 3, and my shadow side is lying and deceit. You're welcome. Hi, I'm your pastor. So things like deception and manipulation and lying, these all come pretty natural to me. Sad to say. And this is true for all of us Enneagram type 3s. And if you know a type 3 and they don't acknowledge that how easy and natural it is for them to bend the truth, well, how perfectly meta is that? Of course, either they haven't done the work yet to figure out, like, no, that's true about you, or they're just bending the truth about the fact that they don't bend the truth. Lying, deceit, manipulation, all that's gross. 100%. It is. Ugh. But then again, all of our shadow sides are. in theory, each number on the Enneagram, no matter what type you are, you will think that your shadow side is like the grossest. It's the most repulsive. If you're not repulsed by your shadow side on the Enneagram type, then maybe you have misidentified your type. So all of our sides are gross. Try not to judge me for mine, okay? Just because I share with you mine, try not to judge me. Unless, of course, you are a type 1, in which case you've been already judging me the entire time because that's your shadow side. 1s are as good at judging as 3s are at lying. Aren't humans fun? I begin this little confessional because last week, if you were with me on the show or if you read the article, I wrote about the song This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. And I talked about this experience of going to a lesbian friend's wedding and how that was the song they danced to for their first dance. And the hook of the song declares, "I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me." And in that article, I was reflecting about how challenging those lyrics are for me because the truth is, I often am scared to be seen, as the real me, at least. And that leads me to cover up with masks and project images into the world of who I want you to see, who I want you to think instead. And so I want to continue that line of thought. I've had more thoughts around that. And this next session is called First Impressions. James says, it's something to find out my Enneagram number. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. No, you don't have to. You can do whatever you want. But I found it to be an incredibly helpful tool for self-growth and maturation. Ben says, I need a good resource to do a legit Enneagram assessment. Good resource for that. Well, you could. So Sojourn, we've done 2 sermon series on the Enneagram. I think the first one was in 2017. The second one was in 2020, like right before the world shut down, and then a little bit right after. We've done a couple series on the Enneagram. I also, in this article, I link to what I think is the premier group for the Enneagram. It's the Riso Hudson Institute, Enneagram Institute, whatever, RHETI. I think their website is 9types.com. So they do the best, in my opinion. And the tests, you can find tests, and sometimes tests are helpful, but really the best way is a combination, I think, of tests and then also reading thoroughly about each type. And one of them will feel like someone's gotten into your skull and dug out all of the darkest parts about you and then just written it down on a page. You'll be like, that's gross. That's me. All right. So a couple days ago, I met up with a new friend for the first time in real life. We'd connected online during the past year of quarantine, and eventually we discovered, hey, we don't actually live that far from each other. That's kind of fun when that happens. And so a post-vaccinated meetup for happy hour, it seemed like a good idea. So we did last Monday. Now, maybe like yourself, because of the pandemic, I'm very out of shape when it comes to meeting new people. That muscle has been a bit dormant for a while. So that added a fresh layer of anxiety on top of the layers that I already carry of meeting a stranger for the first time. Now, thankfully, he proved to be a fantastic human, and we hit it off real good. And at the end, I submitted a verbal friend request, and he accepted. So we are friends now. It has been decided. But as I drove away, then I did that thing that I imagine many of us do, especially those who are in the image triad, which is Enneagram types 2, 3, and 4. And I played back the previous 90 minutes, evaluating how it went, or more specifically, how I did. Like, was I attentive enough? Was I a good listener? Did I talk too much? Did I talk enough? Did he feel seen and valued and appreciated when he shared? Did I say smart things? Does he think I'm cool? Should I have licked my fingers so much after eating the chips and guac? And I had the thought, man, is this what dating is like? Like, I met my wife in middle school, and, even though we didn't date for years later, like, I don't really have a lot of experience dating. I went to a Christian college, and I don't think I did. I don't know what dating's like, let alone like first dates. It just sounds really exhausting. So I've been reflecting on all this, on my thoughts from last week about my fear of being seen for who I really am. And then about this experience of meeting someone for the first time and being curious about the impression that you left. And thinking about how it is that I can so easily drift into performative mode and project a certain version of myself. Sometimes to the detriment of like the actual me. And so the thought occurred to me, am I a fraud? Is this an appropriate word to use for me? Is that who I am? Is that what I am? Karen says, if you're a 3, the test ain't gonna work. Yeah, that's fair. If I can push back a little bit, as I'm a type 3 and I tested and I crushed the test and it revealed to me real clearly that I was a 3. So I don't know. It worked well for me. It is exhausting. Okay, there's confirmation that the world of dating is exhausting. Thanks for sharing, James. So I had this thought, like, am I a fraud? Am I a fraud? As I'm honest with myself and honest with others, that I often project images into the world, that I often play roles, that I often wear different hats, that I struggle sort of finding the real me and sharing that real me. Like, am I a fraud? So then I went looking, like, what is the definition of a fraud? What is the definition of a fraud? And here's what I found. A fraud can be defined as an intentional deception for the purpose of obtaining some valuable thing or promise from another person, and or resulting in injury to another person. So let me break down those 3 elements. Number 1, intentional. Meaning there is, I would argue, there's conscious intent to confuse or deceive. Okay? So if it's fraud, it's intentional. There's an intention, there's a purpose to confuse or deceive. Number 2, there's deception, meaning at play, there is a misleading falsehood. You are saying this thing when really it's that thing. You're presenting this idea when really it's that. You're trying to talk a person into this, knowing that all while you're misleading someone with untruths, deception. And then number 3, there is the purpose of obtaining value, extracting value, and or the other person is injured as a result of the intentional deception. You're trying to get something from someone. So fraud then is someone who purposely pretends to be someone they are not, or to offer something they cannot actually provide, which then results in their gain at the expense of another's loss. This is how I can best sort of wrap my head around fraud, what it means to be a fraud or to fraud someone. Bernie Madoff, for example, is a fraud. Fun fact, if you go to that website that I listed earlier and you go to each type, if you go to numbers, each type, they'll give you like 30 famous historical people who were like that number, and Bernie Madoff is a type 3. So that made me feel good. Enron was a fraud, if you remember that. Donald Trump, I believe, was and is a fraud, both as a businessman and then as a president. But am I? Like, does that fit me? When I start to reflect on the ways in which I can project images and wear masks and sometimes conceal who I think maybe the real me is, is fraud the right term to use? In consideration of me being a fraud. So when I talk about my insecurities, like I did last week, and they manifest as projections and mask wearing, and combine it with the ways in which I perform various roles for people, I think it's worth asking if this behavior rises to the level of fraud. And after careful consideration, I don't think so. So maybe I buried the lead a little bit here, but I don't think I'm a fraud. at least I sure as heck hope not. So let me try and break it down. First, when I share with you the ways in which I am conscious of how I project images and wear masks and conceal the real me, I don't think it's entirely conscious. And I think this is true for most of our the shadow parts of ourselves, like those parts of us that are often born out of trauma and or come from some survival part of our past. Most of that is happening at a preconscious or subconscious level. I don't typically sit down and think, okay, so now I want to be this kind of person, which means I need to say this and do that. Like I don't think most of the time it is a conscious effort on my part. It is an intentional conscious effort to be something or someone other than who I am. I feel good about that assessment. Second, is there deception involved? Again, because remember the three components: intentional and deception, and for the purpose of extracting value or leaving the other party in injury. Is there deception involved? Again, I don't think so. At least not entirely. Which is to say, even though I can make a distinction between the masks that I wear or the roles that I play with sort of the real, actual, true me, it's also not entirely fair or accurate to say that there's nothing real or true about these masks and roles. Does that make sense? So for instance, I am, or at least I can be, unless you ask my kids, a funny person. Feels really weird to say that. If you have to say it, you're probably not. But my point is, when I'm in that mode of like cracking jokes or presenting as the funny guy, I want you to think that I'm a funny guy, so I'm going to crack some jokes here and use some clever wordplay there. Sure, there's a sense in which that's not the real me. I'm performing as, quote, the funny guy, but it's also not me. Like, one way to describe me is funny, or asterisk, attempts to be at least. And the same thing can be said about the other roles that I play, whether it's the intelligent guy, saying smart things, or the compassionate guy. While I may perform those roles from time to time, they are nonetheless also real parts of who I actually am, I think. Whereas, and that's different for me than if I only pretended to care. If I just pretended to be a caring person, then yes, when I play compassionate guy, that would be more of a deception. But I know deep down, like I really do care about and care for people. And so while it's true that I might be guilty of sometimes overplaying these roles or overplaying these different aspects of me, maybe because I really want that person to think this thing about me, I still think there is enough realness within me that resembles or embodies something like compassion or intelligence or humor, so as to render it separate from what might otherwise be called deception. So this is why, I hope that made sense. This is why I don't think that deception is what's going on here. Because even the roles that I play or the images that I project, I think in the best moments are reflective, or at least they come out of the real part of me. So I don't think it's deception. Anyway, I'm working this out kind of in real time with you, so I may think differently about this, later on. Oh, Karen adds, the chameleoning isn't me becoming a different person or lying about what I am. It's strategically highlighting and or leading with a particular aspect of my personality. Yeah, thanks for helping to continue to kind of articulate this thing that I'm trying to name. So yeah, Enneagram Type 3s, we're really good at chameleoning, sort of figuring out what the situation needs from us, or how we can best be admired or respected or liked in any given context, and then we kind of adapt to that role and perform that role. But it also is still, like, I love how Karen said, it's strategically highlighting or leading with that aspect of my personality. And yeah, I don't think that's the same thing as deception. And then Karen adds, the chameleon chooses the color that serves it best in that situation, but it is that color. Like it does have that color in it. That's great. Thanks, Kay. Susan adds, so since we create the mask we wear to hide our vulnerable parts, the mask is a part of who we are until we get comfortable enough to test those vulnerabilities and be more authentic. Well, that's a fun way to look at it too. I like that. The masks that we wear, Susan's suggesting, like, are created out of the raw materials of the us that is us. And so it might be, polished, overly refined. It might, like Karen said, it might be strategically designed to just highlight the pretty part and sort of veil the clunky part, but it is from us. So it's not us. It's not us entirely, but it's also not us. Therefore, this is why I think deception doesn't necessarily fit here. It's not an appropriate descriptor. And then the third element of fraud, where a person seeks to extract some gain or inflict some harm on the other. This one's a bit trickier for me to sort through out of the three. On the one hand, it's kind of easy to dismiss that that's not what's going on. When I'm, as Karen said, when I'm chameleoning to highlight a particular part of me and maybe, veil some other, like Susan said, more vulnerable parts, it's not because I'm trying to get something out of someone. I don't think. Like, I'm not performing roles and projecting images because I'm trying to get something from you. Rather, I think instead it's more about me protecting the vulnerable part of me that is insecure. And also because my ego enjoys being viewed in a certain way. So whereas fraud is about what can I get out of you, this phenomena that is part of my life is more about me, which I get the irony there, the egocentric part of it anyway. But I'm just saying, it's like, these are part of my own idiosyncrasies and neuroses. It's not about trying to get something out of you. However, at the same time, I don't know, maybe there is a way to explore this particular phenomenon that identifies, maybe it's not about like trying to steal your retirement like Bernie Madoff, but it's about trying to get things like respect and admiration and love. Like, what if those are considered assets that I'm attempting to extract from you? Now, when viewed like that, maybe there is a sense in which that third part of fraudness is at play. Because I am on some level trying to, as a type 3 in the Enneagram, I'm trying to buy your respect. I'm trying to buy your admiration with my skills and my polished image. I said in the article, while I may not be swindling, stay hydrated. While I may not be swindling you out of your retirement like a Madoff or scamming you for your vote like a Trump, I might still be seeking to acquire your admiration through any and all means necessary, including performing as maybe the intelligent guy or the empathetic guy. But if that is a fair or accurate description of what's happening, if I am still extracting love, admiration, respect, it still leaves the question of the existence of a negative impact or harm for you. And again, upon first consideration, I don't know that my performing roles and my wearing masks is necessarily a threat to your well-being in the same way that a legitimate swindler or a huckster might be. And yet, also, I can understand that if you walk away from an interaction with me and think, wow, that Colby guy is just a really kind and thoughtful and respectful person, and then later down the road, you have an experience with me in a different light, maybe you catch me on a bad day or just a really human moment where I'm neither kind nor respectful, you might end up thinking like you've been duped. Like, I thought I knew who that guy was. And so maybe like there's a sense in which that brought pain to you. I think then that goes back to the intentional. Was it intentional? And I really don't think it's intentional. So whether you actually have, been harmed, might be debated. But I understand that people might feel a certain way about it nonetheless. I get that. I absolutely can appreciate that I have, and I've had human moments that have caused people to be like, wait, did I get Colby wrong? Was I wrong about him? And those bum me out when that happens, which sort of just entices me to crawl back into my hole of, never mind, I'm going to not ever be human. I'll just keep playing this superhuman role, because then when I do humanness and vulnerability, then people have leveraged that against me to be like, no, you're not the person we thought you were. Well, all right. Anyway. Okay, so maybe I'm overthinking all this. Maybe writing almost 2,000 words unpacking whether or not I'm a fraud is a bit much. I don't know, maybe. But in the end, maybe I think it is. I think it would be an exaggeration to think of myself as a fraud. So I think in the end, I'm going to say, no, I'm not a fraud. And that's a relief. And yet I'd be lying, and this is how I end the article, and this is how I'll wrap up the show. I'd be lying if I said that I don't sometimes still feel like I am. Okay. So that's where really this boils down to, is like, even if I can sort of look at that specific word fraud and unpack it and measure it against myself and come to the conclusion, no, I'm not a fraud, I still feel that way. I still feel that way at times. When I get all wrapped around this axle of, wait, was that actually me that I was presenting back there? Or was that some overly polished version or some contrived semi sort of me projection? It gets confusing for me in my heart and in my mind. It gets confusing. So I submit that maybe this word fraud is too strong and it's not accurate enough of a term. I still wish I was better at just being me around others. That's the end here. I wish I was better at being just me. And yet whatever. This is as far as I've come so far in my life, 39 years old, and I'm doing the best I can. So some days it's better than others. Some days I walk away from an interaction thinking I felt really genuine. I feel like I really showed up today. And other times it's more like, good gravy, what the crap was that? Did you try hard much there, buddy? That's embarrassing. And I want to practice kindness to myself in all this. I do. Because like I said above, it's not that I'm not anything like the roles that I play. It's not that I'm not anything like the masks that I don. I know that I'm not a total imposter. I know that. I know that I'm just a scared, insecure, and confused human who isn't always convinced that people will like him for who he is. Not to mention, I myself am not always sure who I am. That's a game I'm still trying to find the instruction manual for, let alone trying to win, which is a type 3. We always want to win. That's a game I don't know if I'm going to win. So if you and I have ever met in person, or if you've ever watched one of my live shows or listened to one of my sermons, please know that while you may not be getting the 100% absolute unvarnished true version of Colby Martin, you're probably not. Don't take it personal. You are at least getting someone who is honest and aware enough to know that oftentimes he presents these very carefully crafted images of himself to the world, and he's working on it. He's working on it. And know that the images that I project at their purest, they are a decent facsimile of these true values that I hold in my heart. And my hope is that with each passing year, I discover more and more about the real me. And then in response, may I also continue to move the needle away from so often and so easily projecting false selves and wearing masks, and may I move it toward an increased vulnerability of sharing the real me with others. And in the meantime, since I'm just a work in progress here, I hope you trust me when I say, I don't mean to be a fraud. I think. So that's my article for today. That's my contribution to the world. And I appreciate you hanging out with me while I shared it with you. If you found it interesting or valuable and you want to go and share the article, you're welcome to do that. If you want to subscribe to Perspective Shift, you know where to go to do that. I'm going to peruse a few of your comments here before I wrap it up here in a minute or two. Karen says, hot take, what if threes are allowed to have human moments just like literally everyone else? Yeah, that'd be nice if we didn't spend so much energy trying to convince people that we didn't have human moments. Then it probably wouldn't be so drastically record scratching a big deal when we do have human moments. So it's kind of like, sometimes that's the bed we make for ourselves. And other times it's like, back off. I get to be human. I get to make mistakes. Thanks, Mercy. Here's from Karen. Again, she quotes back, I myself am not always sure who I am. I think this essential love your three well knowing. A lot of the projection just comes from trying to build a foundation. We're the humans with the identity most built on shifting sand. It takes a while to build a house on a rock. Thanks, friend. I agree. Hi, Amy. Haven't seen you in a while. Amy adds, self-discovery is the longest journey we'll ever take. Amen to that. Amen to that. Susan adds, what about the act as if until you feel it? This is one of the ways I can present. Act as if I'm comfortable until I am. Yeah, the fake it till you make it. I think that's a legitimate approach. I really do. Like oftentimes you behave a particular way. You behave yourself into the belief, right? Like I'm not there yet, but I will act as though I am. And then 100%, I think that can contribute to legitimately making significant changes. So, all right. So James, thank you for leading me into my final thought here. James says, the fact that you shared this makes me admire you even more, Colby. And I am so honored by that. Thank you. And it leads me to share this final. So I'm going to scroll down to the end of the article here. Now for a real mind twist. So if you go, oh y'all, this is just, it's a trip. It's a trip. So the article that I linked to in here to the Enneagram Institute, to the information about the type 3, if you scroll all the way down for each of the number section, they have like, here is how you can practice personal growth. And there's some really wonderful, tangible, like action steps, real practical things for each number type, like maybe 5 or 6 things like to really focus on for personal growth specific to that type. And for the type 3, look at this. Here's the first bullet point under this section of how to practice personal growth. It says this: for type 3s, real development, to like develop as a type 3, it's essential to be truthful. Be honest with yourself and others about your genuine feelings and needs. Likewise, resist the temptation to impress others or inflate your importance. Okay, this is good. And this next sentence, you will impress people more deeply by being authentic than by bragging about your successes or exaggerating your accomplishments. So now the inception level mind twist of all of this is you have to ask yourself the question, so is this article, this whole thing that I just shared, is this just another attempt to impress people, but this time using the tool of being authentic? Like, have I really grown here? Am I just now playing the authentic, vulnerable, honest guy? And I don't know the answer to that. Okay. There's no surprise coming where I tell you one way or the other. I'm like, I don't know. Is this all just a multi-layered way of gaining more admiration from people to put on the hat of, look at how authentic and vulnerable I can be? Thanks for loving me. There's not going to be a real answer for that. There's just me sharing, like, look, it's right there. And I just did the thing, and I can't exactly articulate where it came from. I think it came from a genuine place. I really do. I really do. Oh man. Yes, Mercy. Let me impress you with my authenticity. It's fine. Like I said, thanks for loving me, people. This has been a lovely show today. It's been I really do enjoy spending time with you all. Karen adds, I knew you'd appreciate that, Karen. This catch-22 conclusion is pretty much the root of all my insomnia. Oh, Susan, we do need a gong moment. I can't wait to bring the gong back to Sojourn. Hey, next week, if you want to come hang out with me on The Altar, it's going to be my 50th episode of The Altar, and I'm bringing on a special guest, John Steingard. John Steingard was the front man for the band Hawk Nelson for a number of years, and then the band disbanded a couple years ago. And after that happened, John went through what many of us might refer to, and what he might even call himself, a stage of deconstructing his evangelical beliefs. And he shared a bit of that with his public, and it ended up catching large news organizations and kind of contributed to this larger narrative about this mass sort of ex-evangelical movement. And I got a pleasure to meet John recently, and he's a really, really lovely human being. And he's doing some really cool work in that sort of post-evangelical, ex-evangelical, deconstructing world. And I said, John, would you come onto the altar and would you talk with us about what are some of the beliefs that you sacrificed because you realized they were holding you back from flourishing and well-being? And so John's going to join us live here on the show next week at the normal time, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific. So I would love for you to join myself and John next week. And then tonight at 7 p.m. on the Kate and Colby show, which happens every Wednesday night, Stephanie Tate is going to be our live guest. And Kate and I can't wait to meet. We've obviously interacted on the interwebs, but we haven't met. So we can't wait to meet Stephanie tonight, who's a disability advocate, who's an incredible author, and speaks about things like the theology of pain and suffering. And so it's going to be a really, I hope, a really meaningful and impactful conversation and time with Stephanie tonight. So that's the end of my show. And I can't thank you enough for being with me. That's it. I love y'all. Have a good week. Bye.